All right, welcome back everyone. So if you've seen the recent videos on the channel, you probably saw that I finally decided to jump in and purchase a new bike after riding the same bike for quite a long time and actually having been away from cycling or mountain biking for a long time. So I want to kind of step back and walk through how we got here, the decision process, and how we landed on the Canyon Spectral AL6. So if you go back, if you've seen the intro to the channel, you might know that a long time ago, 20 odd years ago, I was very much into cycling. I was a competitive road cyclist. I was into competitive cyclocross. And it actually all started with mountain biking. I was in the Pacific Northwest at the time and wanted to enjoy the mountains and scenery there and got into mountain biking. But then my competitive nature took over and I was like, I need to get in better shape. I need to spend more time on the road. And that led to getting a road bike and heading down that path of being competitive in road. And then that circled around to kind of wanting to get a little dirty again and spend some time in cyclocross as well. So I'd done everything from Tyriums to time trials to stage racing and a lot of fun. But life has all kinds of other demands and actually got out of all of cycling for a long time. What I found out, it's a bit of an aside, but what I found out was being competitive and being in shape to be competitive just burned me out on the enjoyment altogether. And so when you're training many hours a week, you're tracking everything, you're tracking your power output, your nutrition, it can be a bit intense. And when life pressures got in the way, it just fell off. And I wasn't even enjoying it anymore. I wasn't enjoying riding for what riding was. It was just, it became work and it became a chore. So I did get away from it. But, more recently, had some free time and live in the Southwest now outside of the Phoenix area and actually live near some beautiful mountains. I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the old Cannondale out. I have a 2001, I believe, Cannondale Jekyll, and it was still in great condition in my garage. Took it to a local shop, had it checked over, and it was great. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go give this thing a try and see if I enjoy this still. And you know what? Going out there with no technology, like no heart rate monitors, no power monitors, just enjoying being out in nature and enjoying the trails was just awesome. It kind of got me back to why I fell in love with cycling in the first place. So I was like, well, this bike works and it's great. So we're just going to enjoy this a little bit, enjoy the trails around here and see where things go. So as I was riding regularly on the weekends and exploring different trails, I was also learning a lot about the current state of mountain bike technology. I thought all the recent changes were not recent, but the changes over the years were really, really cool. And I decided, hey, you know what? I am enjoying this again. I'm going to take the plunge and upgrade to something new. And when I had first taken my old bike to the local shop to get tuned up, I had started looking a little bit. I saw at the store a Trek Fuel EX. I think it was like a 7.8. It had the electric shifting, the carbon frame had everything. It was like $7,500. I didn't know even much about kind of what the current state of the art was at the time, but I was like, this looks like the bike. I'll figure out what this is and someday I'll get something like this. And then I went back to whatever I was doing, but that in my head was roughly kind of the price point and the set of components I wanted, because I thought, I've been out of this for a really long time. If you're going to jump back in, like, let's have some fun and let's get all the best of the best, the newest stuff, and really enjoy it. As I was going through the decision process and learning more about current state of bikes and, enduro bikes, trail bikes, cross country, kind of going through, like, trying to figure out what I wanted. And I realized, I think back when I got the Jekyll, it's, by today's standards, it's a pretty cross country bike. From the specs I found, I believe it has a head tube angle of about 70 degrees. I think it has on the lefty fork, 120 mils of travel on the front. I think 100 on the back. Obviously 26-inch wheels, 2.1-inch cross-country tires, and no dropper post, no nothing. It's got a 3x, and it does have hydraulic brakes. But I think back when I bought the Jekyll, I think maybe it was considered a cross-country bike, but at the time, Cannondale also had the Scalpel, which was the true cross-country racing bike. And I don't even know if that had a rear suspension. I think it may have just had flexible chainstays. Anyway, obviously things have changed a little bit. And so as I was learning, I kind of did all the different options out there in terms of geometries and styles. And what I also noticed that a lot of the trails I was riding, and you can see it in some of the videos, are quite rocky around here. A lot of loose rock, and also just a lot of like solid chunks of rock can make for a very rough ride. So I decided I could have gone with something closer to the Jekyll, but I actually decided, hey, it's been a long time. I'm going to try something a little on the more aggressive trail side. And I thought, given the roughness of the trails, I definitely wanted to go with something with 29-inch wheels. I wanted to go with something with a little more suspension travel, and I wanted something with a slacker geometry to handle the downhills. I don't think I'll ever be kind of the aggressive enduro type downhill rider, but I wanted to give the more slacker geometry a try just to see what it was like. So as I said before, I had seen a Trek Fuel EX. Like I said, I think it was a 9.8 at a local shop for a little less than $8,000, and I thought this was it. Well, it turns out when I actually started researching what I wanted, the Trek Fuel EX was probably going to be a good pick. It was the more aggressive trail geometry, slacker head tube, longer travel suspension, had all the goodies. And I started watching a lot of videos and learning a lot more about kind of bikes in that range. So I looked at the Stump Jumper and the Stump Jumper Evo, similar geometries kind of in that ballpark of what I was looking for. I looked at Santa Cruz a little bit. Yeah, as a kid, I was riding Santa Cruz skateboards. I have Santa Cruz snowboards. And so I've always loved the company and had a lot of respect for them. And I forget the model name that fit into the general category. I want to say it was the High Boy or the High Tower. I forget. But they looked a little too expensive for what I was looking for. But then kind of in my research, then I ended up learning about the whole direct-to-consumer brand, something I was not familiar with at all, and came across a bunch of really good videos, information on the direct-to-consumer brands and what they offer and what the experience is like getting them. And I kind of zeroed in on Canyon, learned a lot about the Canyon Spectral, and I was looking at the Spectral and the Spectral 125. I could see kind of going either way on them where, again, they have the slacker head tube. I was still worried even in the purchasing process that the longer 150, 160 travel would be too much for my needs, and I thought maybe the 125 would be good. So I was kind of considering all that, 4-ish bikes with like the Trek, Canyon, and the Stump Jumpers, and was looking at all kind of like I said, those higher price points. But of course, as you've seen, I landed in a completely different place. Yes, I landed on the Spectral 29, which from an overall geometry and travel standpoint was what I was looking for. But I ended up with the AL6, which is a very, I think, reasonably priced. I like how reasonably priced is a little over $3,000 now. After doing more and more research, and frankly, look, spending like $7,000-8,000 on the bike was not something I was particularly looking forward to. I just thought it was going to be a fun splurge, and I was trying to figure out how to, justify all of that. When after learning more, I realized I didn't have to justify it. When you're coming from technology which is 20 years old, I think pretty much anything that is modern from a good brand and a reasonable price point is going to be head and shoulders above what I had. And I probably wouldn't notice the difference between the AL6 and carbon version. I might, but would it really matter? Like in the end, this is all about having fun, and I think I would have a great time. On the AL6, I'd save a ton of money and feel good about it. I also thought, I'm like, well, I think the aluminum frames will last a very long time. As you saw, like I kept my last bike for 20 years, so who knows? I don't know if I'll keep this one for 20 years. The Cannondale aluminum frame held up just fine. So I think it's affordable. It'll last a long time. I also think it'll take a beating really, really well. The trails here are really rock, and more than once I've hit the frame on a rock, simply tipped over and hit the frame. So I'm not going to worry about an aluminum frame at all. I think if I had an expensive carbon frame, I would definitely worry about that a little bit more. Specifically went with the AL6 model, which has a higher end component set, because I felt like this would be something that would just work. Frame would be great, the component set would be great, and I wouldn't need to upgrade anything. I'd have a great foundation that could work for years. Now, of course, I could if I wanted, but I wouldn't need to. So for me, it was more, I felt like getting like the good components that would last was worth a little bit more than the AL5. So that's why I went with the AL6. Overall, as you may have seen in other videos, I'm super happy with it. It's simply amazing. Kind of make the jump of decades of technology advancement. The difference between what I have and something a little more expensive, probably not worth it for me at this point.